Hello, listeners. This is Kat, and welcome back to Put Your Hands Up Podfics. This will be the reading and re-recording of Yuuei Survival Guide. Here's the summary. Izuku steps toward the other teen, holding his hand out to shake. I'm Midoriya Izuku, by the way. We haven't officially met, right? I don't remember seeing you at the entrance exam. The blue-haired boy pauses, studies his hand uncertainly before shrugging. Shirakumo Oboro, he introduces in return, hand phasing right through Izuku's when he goes to return the handshake. Shirakumo doesn't seem surprised by it, but Izuku whips his head back when the intense chill climbs up his arm. Or, Izuku tries to pretend everything is okay, even though his home life is crumbling around him. There's an insanely powerful quirk that's not entirely his, coursing through his veins. He suddenly knows his childhood hero All Might, and to top it all off, he seems to have befriended a pale blue-haired ghost that has way too much insider knowledge on Izuku's new homeroom teacher and English teacher. He's really just trying to survive UA. This fic is 50 chapters long, with over 540,000 words. I have recorded this fic before in the past, but I felt it was due for a re-recording, that it was a long time overdue on my part. So here's Chapter 1. Chapter 1. When Izuku got his official UA acceptance letter, it was like his whole world shifted. He felt like his life, everything he'd known, his whole world even, had been tugged out from under him, like a rug he'd been standing on pulled straight out from under his feet. In a good way, of course. The best way, because he did it. He finally did. He'd been dreaming of attending UA High School from the moment he could really talk, from that first time he'd seen All Might on the news years ago, grinning widely, a promise to everyone watching, as he carted injured and unconscious civilians out of a collapsed building. Izuku had known from that exact second that he wanted to be just like All Might when he grew up. But his dreams had never seemed achievable, not to anyone but him. He'd always known that. From the very moment he'd been diagnosed quirkless, the x-rays his pediatrician had shown his mother and him when he was just 5 years old, showing that little, life-defining joint that would forever make him an outcast in a quirk society. The diagnosis people treated as if it was some deadly ailment, instead of just a lack of a quirk. He'd known since he was first diagnosed that he'd never be like everyone else, that he'd never have it easy like everyone else. But he'd tried not to let it stop him. Tried being the key word there. It was easier said than done, in a world dominated by quirked individuals. One by one, he'd had to pluck out what few dreams he had when they didn't seem viable, or when people told him he'd never be able to do them as a quirkless child. But the one dream he could never seem to shake, the one he held the closest to his chest, was to become a hero like All Might. To be the hero who smiled, no matter what. The one people looked up to. The one who people looked to for guidance and support in trying times. It's all he'd ever wanted for himself. All he'd ever wanted to be in the world since he was tiny. It didn't matter who told him it was useless to try. It didn't matter who said he'd never be able to do it. Izuku could never let go of it. It was his dream. All he'd ever wanted in life. So he wasn't going to give up, no matter who was telling him to. He believed in himself, even if no one else did. And he'd worked so hard to get to this point. He'd worked hard in junior high, knowing he didn't have a cool quirk, or any quirk, to fall back on or boost his chances of getting accepted into the school. He'd studied hard, and managed to get grades good enough to get him a seat in the written entrance exam for Yuuei High School, the very school where so many amazing pro heroes, All Might amongst them, had graduated. The school that had trained the best of the best, and he'd somehow managed to scrape his way into their test-taker pool. He'd been waiting for this since he was a child. Izuku had never worked so hard for anything in his life, spending so many hours studying, striving as a quirkless child to get the best grades in the class, to know the most knowledge, to impress the right people so they'd give him a chance, and training his ass off when he wasn't hunched over school notes, working until his limbs felt like jelly and he could hardly stand, with the muscle fatigue, only to keep going, to force himself on because he couldn't give up, spending hours upon hours at Dagoba Beach with All Might, hoping and praying that he'd be able to prove he was good enough to inherit the man's super cool transferable quirk, the very thing that would change his life, the very thing that would make him normal, level the playing field so he wasn't so far behind everyone else anymore. And he'd done it. He'd actually managed to pull it off. Izuku clutches the straps of his yellow backpack tighter, trying not to feel small, as he stares up at the Yuuei High School gates. He'd never felt giddier, more accomplished, as he squared his shoulders and fell into step with the other students hurrying into the school. He feels like he fits in, for the first time in his life. They're all wearing the school's famous uniform, a pair of navy-colored slacks or a skirt, respectively, a white button-up, the gray school jacket, and a bright red tie which, incidentally, matched his own well-loved red sneakers. He looks just like them. He's one of them. He, Midoriya Izuku, is wearing the Yuuei school uniform. This is truly a dream. Izuku bows his head as he grins dumbly to himself. He'd made it. Only a handful of teens made it here. Only 1 in 300 students were accepted into Yuuei, not even mentioning the 40 out of thousands of eager entrance exam participants who managed to claim a spot in the elite hero class programs. 20 students per each hero class. Only 2, Class 1A and 1B. And he was one of those select few. And not even that, but he'd made it into Class 1A. How incredible was that? A quirkless Deku falling into step with all these amazing students, the best of the best, powerful, strong, clever, people who were going to make a name for themselves, whether as heroes, support, business, or even Gen Ed, people who were already good enough to be students at such an elite hero school. Izuku still can't believe he's here. A quirkless... Actually, is that even true anymore? He's not technically a quirkless Deku anymore. Not now that he has One for All coursing through his veins. But still, the sentiment hung steady because no matter who or what Izuku is now with this inherited quirk, he'd always been quirkless. Izuku heaves a nervous breath to calm himself down, finally lifting his head. There's an air of excitement circulating the crowd he's following into the building. Other excited first-year students ready to start their schooling at such a school. Or the returning students ready to continue their journey towards graduation and being full-fledged heroes. When they're finally in the school, Izuku manages to branch off from the crowd, trying to remember the directions towards the homeroom classroom. Class 1A. He is never going to get tired of saying that. That he'd been given when he got his class schedule. He knows not many kids will be going the same direction he is, when the hero classes make up such a small percentage of the school's student body. Actually, Izuku is the only student heading in this direction. The halls are long, the ceilings high. Classrooms are sparsely placed, probably pretty big inside too. The classroom doors themselves are huge, Izuku notes as his hands tighten on the straps of his backpack anxiously. Izuku knows he needs to pick up the pace as the time before the bell trickles down as he searches for his class. He hurries along in fear of being late on his first day. He cannot be late. Not here. Not at UA. Finally, after what felt like miles of panicked running down the hall, he's located his new classroom. The door, like all others he's passed, stretches high up to the ceiling, nearly touching it. Izuku himself had never felt shorter in his life. He'd always been short, always smaller than his peers, and Kacchan, but he'd never felt it like this. Still, a tall door wasn't going to stop him from achieving his dreams. So with a deep breath, he slides the door open. The room is loud when he peeks in, bustling with activity from the other students accepted into the heroics program. Despite the bell having not rung yet, he still feels a little late. Nearly all the seats are taken, or crowded around. He's not late, is he? He hadn't heard the bell, and he doesn't see the teacher. Izuku looks a little closer at his new classmates. He's not at all surprised to see Kacchan in one of the desks. His feet kicked up on the desktop carelessly. Izuku's cheeks puff out with a huffy sigh as he shakes his head. That's just like Kacchan. He's not sure that he expected anything else, honestly. A change of scenery, not even that scenery change being UA High School, isn't going to change how Kacchan acts. Kacchan is blatantly ignoring another student trying to lecture him. Izuku thinks he remembers the kid from the entrance exam. Neither of them notice him. Not yet, at least. Izuku doesn't get the luxury of another moment to calm himself as the boy with glasses catches sight of him, pausing mid-sentence as he turns from Kacchan and looks at Izuku. The boy pushes his glasses up his nose scrunching up faintly. It's him. Izuku freezes, shifting his feet awkwardly as everyone turns to look at him, Kacchan included. Izuku tries hard not to make eye contact with anyone, but he can feel them all looking at him. The feeling of all these students' eyes snapping towards him makes him want to crumble to the floor in a strange kind of embarrassment he can't seem to place. He isn't sure what's so special about him, but clearly something, if everyone is looking. Awkward. Izuku isn't used to attention. He doesn't like attention being on him. Panic instantly rises in his chest as the seconds drag on without anyone saying anything. He knows his cheeks have flushed lightly at having so much attention on him. Growing up, attention was never a good thing. If you didn't have something beyond exciting to show and share, some cool or powerful or amazing quirk that people deemed useful, attention meant nothing good. He'd learned that early on. His classmates had made sure he knew that, and it's a lesson he'd always held on to. Izuku can hear himself sputtering nonsense. It's what he does when he's nervous, no matter how hard he tried to keep his mouth shut. It's a habit he'd had since he was young, and he can't seem to break it. He has half a mind to turn on his heels and leave the room to avoid the embarrassment of this, but he's worked too hard and come too far to even entertain the thought. This was where he belonged, whether he fit in around here or not. All Might believed in him now. All Might entrusted his quirk to him. Izuku would do everything in his power to show the hero he made the right call. Izuku squares his shoulders, prepared for the worst, but yet, to his genuine surprise, the tall, glasses-clad teenager beelines towards him, arching in a formal bow. "Good morning," the teenager says tightly, yet pleasantly. "My name is Ida Tenya, from the—" Yeah, I know." Izuku interrupts on instinct, waving his hands in a placating gesture. "I saw you at the entrance exam." Izuku remembers seeing this guy in the auditorium before the exam, and he'd just heard Ida introducing himself to Kacchan the exact same way moments earlier. And, now that he's heard the name, He remembers hearing it at the entrance exam, too, even if he hadn't thought to remember it then. He was just another voice in a packed auditorium. How was Izuku supposed to know they'd become classmates? He didn't even think he'd make it into any of the classes. "My name is Midoriya Izuku." Izuku introduces in turn, after clearing the nerves from his throat. Super nice to meet you." He hears the uncertain wobble in his tone, but knows it's definitely just his nerves still. Ida talks a bit more with Izuku, having more luck with him than he had with Kacchan, who was still glaring daggers at Izuku from his desk. Ida does most of the talking, but Izuku is content to listen more than he speaks. He's still nervous, and he's starting to feel a little overwhelmed, and he feels Kacchan glaring, which isn't a good thing. Ida seems to think Izuku knows more than your average student, for some reason, which is a little ridiculous, because Izuku feels like he knows even less than everyone else, considering he hadn't even had a quirk until a couple weeks ago. And he's honestly still kinda reeling from that. Ida doesn't seem to really believe him when Izuku tells him that he hadn't figured much more out than Ida had that day. He doesn't know why Ida is so hung up on this. Izuku simply couldn't find it in himself to leave another student like that. Not when they could have gotten hurt. After all, wasn't the whole point of this class to help people? It didn't seem very heroic to him to turn his back on someone in need, even if the zero-pointer wouldn't help him rake up points. He'd simply been doing the right thing, helping someone, especially someone who'd been so kind to him, too. It didn't feel right to leave them to fend for themselves when he could help. Ida seems to consider his explanation thoroughly, and the intensity of it honestly makes Izuku feel a little weird. Was it really so odd of a reaction? He knows no one else had tried to help, but he truly believed it was the right response. Izuku startles when he feels a presence behind him, body stiffening up as a voice, a girl's voice, interrupts them. Izuku swirls around to face the new addition, cheeks flushing once again at the kind smile on the girl's face. "Oh, hey!" Her grin widens as she scans Izuku's face. "I remember that messed up hair. Falling boy." Falling boy? Oh, right. This is the girl who'd stopped him from crashing to the ground when he'd tripped before the exam. She also happens to be the one he'd, in turn, saved after she got caught in the rubble created from the zero-pointer, emerging from the ground. She was very kind. He's glad she also made it into the heroics class. The girl keeps talking on, but Izuku can't seem to keep up with her. Maybe it's nerves or the fact that this is all pretty new for him. People wanting to talk to him. People showing interest in him. You don't get a lot of that when people know you're quirkless. It's an odd change of pace for him. He's not sure he really knows how to process it. She seems happy enough, all bright-eyed and wide grins as she bounces on her heels and talks enthusiastically. He likes her, he decides. Or maybe it's the fact that he feels like he owes this, his place in this program, to this girl. He'd seen what she'd said, how she'd offered up her own points for him after the exam when he had no combat points of his own. No one had ever gone out of their way for him like that. He's not sure if he would have even made it into the school without her vouching for him like that. So he's very grateful to her. Izuku makes sure to thank her diligently when the thought crosses his mind, head bowing respectfully as his cheeks heat up. If he's honest, after that point, he doesn't really remember much of their conversation. They're mostly just rambling back and forth with Ida listening in behind Izuku. Truth be told, Izuku's not even sure they're having the same conversation, but it flows easily enough that the rambling takes away some of his lingering nerves. He's pretty overwhelmed by all this, and he can tell she's excited. He's excited too. It's just nice to talk with someone, to have someone match his energy so it's not weird. This girl actually seems like a very nice person, so maybe they could be friends? If she wants to, at least. She's still talking excitedly about orientation and meeting their classmates and teachers when a new voice, an older voice that sounds like it's been worn down over the years, cuts her off sharply. If you're just here to make friends, then you can pack up your stuff now. Izuku gapes, leaning slightly to peer around the girl and into the hallway, where a yellow log of fabric is lying along the floor. There's a blank face peeking out, and the features, devoid of emotion and exhausted looking, match up with the voice. Tired and worn. The log of fabric looks like it doesn't really want to be there, but is out of obligation. Izuku is stunned into silence. There's a moment's pause. Izuku, Ida, and the girl all frozen in place, and then, in a quick movement, the girl is jumping away from the figure, her back bumping against Izuku's chest as the three of them stare down at the figure in the hall. Izuku can feel Ida's unnerving gaze from his shoulder, moderately surprised, but not as surprised as Izuku thinks he should be, given the situation. There is a man in a bright yellow sleeping bag on the floor outside their classroom, supposedly their new teacher. That's a little weird. The yellow sleeping bag crinkles a little as the figure inside moves. Then the man inside lets out a heavy-sounding sigh before he speaks again. Welcome to Yuei's hero course. The sleeping bag unzips just enough for the man's hand to lift something to his mouth, a pouch of some sort, before he finally pushes himself to his feet, unzipping the sleeping bag all the way as he stands, letting the yellow fabric pull around his feet. They watch him uneasily, but the man doesn't seem fazed by it in the slightest. It took 8 seconds before you all shut up. That's not gonna work. Izuku can do nothing more than stare at the man as he talks, voice low and monotonous. He steps out of his sleeping bag and collects it from the ground as he continues. Time is precious. Rational students would understand that. The man surveys the three of them with tired eyes before his gaze shifts to the rest of the class in the room. Hello. Even that sounded bland and exhausted. I'm Aizawa Shoda, your teacher. And that, well, that's not quite what Izuku was expecting. Weren't all the teachers at Yuei heroes? Izuku isn't sure he knows this guy. And if the collective gasp from the rest of the class is anything to go off, he's not alone. Still, the man is undeterred by their surprise. Maybe he's always like this, so he's used to these kinds of reactions from people. But Izuku still feels a bit bad. He hadn't meant to be rude. This is their sensei, after all. They should be respecting him. Right. Let's get to it. The man huffs tiredly, digging through his sleeping bag before pulling out a uniform. It's the physical education uniform, Izuku notes in awe. He only knows this from watching the Yuei Sports Festival on TV for the past couple years in anticipation for his own chances at the festival, and as a way to analyze students' quirks. Put these on and head outside. It's at that moment Izuku finally notices the figure stood behind Aizawa-sensei in the hallway. He doesn't know how he hadn't noticed the latecomer before. Maybe it was the shock of their new hero course teacher inching into the classroom like some oversized caterpillar, or maybe just Izuku's overall distraction as he tries to make sense of all of this. He doesn't know what he was expecting their first day to be like, but it's certainly nothing like this. The new guy is tall, broad in the shoulders in a way Izuku isn't. He's definitely a student, though. He's younger than the man in front of him, a teenager, so he's not a teacher, and he's also wearing the UA school uniform. There's no way this kid isn't a student. Probably another classmate who's unfortunate enough to be arriving late to class. Yet, instead of trying to sneak in past their new teacher, clearly a teacher you don't want to mess around with, to avoid first-day trouble, The teenager stands completely still behind Aizawa-sensei. He's just standing there, looking almost bored. His arms are crossed over his chest in a way that screams indifference, and his lips pucker like he's chewing on the inside of his cheek. The look on his face strikes Izuku as odd. No student who'd been given a position at Yuei's elite 1A roster, any student hand-selected as one of the few to be accepted into such a small class, would ever look like that. Bored. Unimpressed. Who would be bored at a school like Yuei anyways? Izuku's brows furrow as he takes the kid in. He's got light, pastel blue-colored hair that almost looks fiery. Actually, no, that's not right. Kachan has fiery hair, and that's not what this guy has. But he also doesn't have curls like Izuku. The blue tufts of hair float almost weightlessly above the guy's head. It looks natural, so Izuku wonders if he's using any products to achieve such a look. But it also looks too soft to be held up with hairspray or gel. Izuku wonders if it has something to do with his quirk. His eyes are bright blue too, but they're a lot darker than his hair. Another defining feature on the teenager is a bandage running across the bridge of his nose. Bright blue eyes level Aizawa-sensei a fond look before turning into the room and looking over all the students with an impressed look. His hand settles over the frame of the door as he peers into the room to look at them. He's scanning the students more intently than their new teacher had. Izuku's eyes are stuck on the teen. Now that Izuku has gotten a good look at this guy, he seems older than them. How he holds himself, the confident air he has. It's very unlike all of Izuku's new classmates, minus the unshakable Kachan, of course. Maybe he's not a first year after all. Izuku would guess maybe 17 or 18, because he certainly didn't look 14 or 15. So is he perhaps a third year or something? Why would he be here at 1A then? Izuku's gaze follows the blue-haired teenager as he swiftly steps past Aizawa-sensei, then squeezes carelessly past Izuku, Ida, and the girl as well. He doesn't feel the faint whoosh of air that usually comes with motion. And Aizawa-sensei, nor any of the other students seem to acknowledge this guy in the slightest. Izuku blinks owlishly. Is this some sort of test? No one says anything on the matter, not about the teenager currently doing laps around the room sizing them up, or the fact he'd come in late without their new teacher making an example out of him like he had with Izuku and his new peers. Sensei doesn't even acknowledge his companion, that had clearly come with him. No one so much as bats an eye at the new student now perched at the back of the room watching them. Seriously, this has to be a test. What else could it be? Who is this guy? No one even glances in the blue-haired boy's direction as PE uniforms are handed out. Aizawa-sensei watches over his nose, making sure they all grab the uniforms that have been already fitted with the measurements they'd handed in before the school year, and turns on his heels, leaving the room without a word after everyone has one. The students pour out of the room after him, all heading towards the locker rooms to change. Izuku watches them go, letting the confusion win over. Before he knows it, he's the last one remaining in the classroom, just lingering by the door his peers had left through. If he lingers too long, he'll be late. He knows that. But he also can't just leave. The latecomer is still in the room, back leaned against the wall at the back of the room, unbothered. Like he isn't also supposed to be rushing to change his clothes in an attempt to appease their new sensei. Izuku knows what it's like to be the kid who gets ignored. It sucks. So he can't, in good conscience, do the same thing to someone else. Izuku turns fully to face the room before he can think better of it, sucking in a hesitant breath before blowing it out. The new student hadn't gotten a PE uniform, not even with Aizawa-sensei so obviously making sure everyone got theirs. He still stood at the back of the room, attention raised to the ceiling, as if trying to pass time. Izuku can't place the look on this boy's face, but it's not a particularly nice one. It's a bit rude that no one so much as looked at the other boy. He couldn't even imagine being that ignored on the first day of a new class. "Hey, are you all right?" Izuku speaking before he can stop himself. For a long second, the boy at the back of the room ignores him. Irritation flurries in Izuku's stomach. He's trying to be kind, and this guy is ignoring him? When he still doesn't look over after another second, Izuku forcefully clears his throat. Maybe the guy just hadn't heard him. He's clearly lost in his own head. If he ignores people and doesn't follow instructions, he's bound to get kicked out of school, especially at a school like this. The flicker of irritation melts away almost as fast as it had settled when the blue-haired teenager startles abruptly, attention shooting to Izuku. He looks completely surprised for another long second, eyes staring intently at Izuku as his face twists up in confusion and his eyebrow is arching in disbelief. Izuku bites his lip, clearing his throat once again now that he has the other's attention. You didn't get your PE uniform. I'm sure Aizawa-sensei didn't mean to forget you or anything. I think he's just, a little tired. I think even teachers get overwhelmed on the first day, you know?" Izuku's words hang in the air for a second. The kid doesn't say anything. He tears his gaze away from Izuku, looks curiously around the room, before his eyes land back on Izuku. He looks baffled. Izuku doesn't understand. Finally, the other teenager opens his mouth to respond, but freezes before his jaw snaps shut. He hesitates, then points to himself awkwardly. He blinks once, then twice before he clears his throat. "Are you talking to me?" "Who else would I be talking to?" Izuku snorts in amusement. He lets his arms cross over his chest as he nods slowly, his own gaze trailing over the room just to assure himself, despite the fact he already knows, that it's just the two of them left. There's no one else in the room, so obviously he's talking to this kid. "It's just us in here now, isn't it?" The other student's jaw drops before a smile slowly starts to creep along his face until it's a wide grin that makes Izuku want to grin in return. "You can really see me? Like, seriously see me? I mean, you are talking to me, but you can see me too?" Izuku cocks his head faintly in confusion. "Yeah? Blue fluffy hair, blue eyes. You're wearing the school uniform. Am I not supposed to see you? Is it a quirk? Wait, are you supposed to be invisible? Because that would be so cool." "Nope, not a quirk," the other teen chirps, and he steps towards Izuku, smile broadening, if it were even possible. His eyes are lit up with so much excitement, and his gaze is laser-focused on Izuku as if he's the greatest thing since sliced bread. "I can't believe this. It's been so long since... Wow." Izuku forces a nervous laugh as he rubs the back of his neck awkwardly. He returns the grin instinctually, because it's hard not to return so much enthusiasm. Izuku steps towards the other teen, holding his hand out to shake in a polite greeting. "I'm Midoriya Izuku, by the way. We haven't officially met yet, right? I don't remember seeing you at the entrance exam." The blue-haired boy pauses sharply, gaze dropping down to Izuku's extended hand. He studies it just long enough for the awkwardness to hit Izuku full force again, before the other finally settles on shrugging. The other boy's hand swings to hit Izuku's in a handshake, accompanied by a cheerful introduction of Shirakumo Oboro. Except Instead of the blue-haired teen's hand clasping into his own when their hands come together, the other boy's hand phases right through Izuku's. Shirakumo doesn't seem surprised by it, but Izuku whips his hand back when the intense chill climbs up his arm. Oh. All right, listeners, this concludes the first half to Chapter 1 of Yuuei Survival Guide. The second half to this chapter will be up next. Many of you may be curious as to why I decided to re-record this. It may look familiar because there is a full version of this that I had done before years ago, and I just felt it was due for an update. I feel like I've progressed a lot with Podfic since I had first done this one, and this was one of the first long fics that I ever really jumped into when I started doing Podfic. So I'm really excited to do this one. The first couple chapters as well have been edited by the author since the time that I had done the first podfic, so there might be some changes to maybe some sentences and things. So it is a little bit updated as well, which is really cool. But I'll be putting this out, a slow progression probably on this one, just because I've done this one before, but I'm just trying to do due diligence at this point. Really just kind of trying to get in touch with this fic again because it's been so long. This fic is a monster with 50 chapters, a lot of word count. I love it and adore it, and I'm just a huge fan of any of those, I'm Izuku and I see ghost kind of fics, especially when Oboro is involved. So this is one of my favorites. I'm sure many of you recognize it. I'd love to hear your thoughts and reactions in the comments. And if there's those of you who have already listened to this one and you're hearing maybe a difference as well, I'd love to hear some feedback on how you're feeling about it. I'm really excited to start this project again. So drop your comments below for me. And as always, thank you all so much for listening.